Hello, I'm Bob Wilson. I'm a counselor at Corizon Family and Community Services. In this presentation, we'll be looking at another aspect of the challenges of returning to work during the pandemic. We're going to focus today on supporting coworkers, clients, patrons, and customers at your place of work. In our first presentation, we looked at some of the potential effects of our months of restrictions under the pandemic. For example, people might be experiencing anxiety, grief, depression, social isolation and loneliness, irritability, diminished energy, difficulty with complex issues and with change, feelings of helplessness or of loss of control, physical discomforts, and so on. These are not mere speculations. Between May and July of 2020, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health carried out national surveys in Canada, which indicated that nearly 20% of respondents reported moderate to severe anxiety, nearly 20% reported depression, nearly 25% reported some degree of loneliness, and nearly 25% reported heavy episodic drinking. Well, after several months of isolation and possibly working from home, we may now find ourselves back at the workplace. The second part of our presentation discussed our sense of safety in the workplace, while the third part discussed ideas for basic self-care. Now we may face an additional challenge, encountering our coworkers, clients, patrons, or customers carrying their own effects of the pandemic, as well as navigating changes in the workplace. When we interact with our coworkers, clients, patrons, or customers, the effects of the pandemic which we encounter in others may be subtle, such as shifts of mood, or they may be overt, as some people exhibit noticeable changes of behavior, or as they talk directly with us about what they are going through. How are we supposed to deal with this? This puts us in a delicate position, trying to be supportive, while at the same time being comfortable with the limits of what we can do to help, given that we are not rescuers and most of us are not therapists. Nor should most of us want to act as therapists, because we don't know what personal history and what personal vulnerabilities a person may be carrying, things which could complicate their response to the pressures of the pandemic. And yet, here we are, wanting to be supportive in any way that is reasonably possible. Where do we start? There are times when we see some sort of indicators of distress in others, and it may be appropriate to approach the person and express concern. I've noticed that you've been feeling such and such. How are you doing? How long have you been feeling this way? Now, of course, all of us have some sort of listening skills. Otherwise, we would be unable to interact with people, either in our professional lives or our personal lives. At the same time, listening is a specific skill that goes beyond just hearing what is said. As psychologist Dr. Keith Dobson notes, people at this time are often having normal responses to abnormal situations and conditions. And so our effective listening is all the more vital. So what are some ways that we can listen more effectively? Well, first, seek to listen to another's concerns with empathy, genuineness, and without judgment, and without telling the person what they should feel or think. In active listening, you might mirror back in your own words what you think the person is saying. So it sounds like you're feeling this. Am I getting that right? Use body language that exhibits interest and attention, such as an open stance and eye contact. And be aware of your own feelings and your own inner reactions to what the person is saying. This presupposes that you're keeping up your own self-care. Further, there are ways to offer reassurance to others that can be helpful. On the one hand, breezy brush-offs such as, "Oh, forget it, everything will be fine," probably won't help. Whereas conveying that you hear the person and that their struggle is understandable could be reassuring, as well as noting that the person probably is not alone in this. Many people are struggling with similar concerns these days. In other words, we want to ease any feelings of embarrassment or shame that the person might be feeling in sharing with you. Perhaps the services offered by your organization have been curtailed or altered by pandemic protocols. This can lead to feelings of frustration for us, for our coworkers, and for our clients or patrons or customers. And yet we can all note that we are trying to protect and serve each other as well and as creatively as we can. We can take those extra moments to stop and listen and to convey that everyone is important. If someone shares with us a concern, we might ask them what has helped when they were feeling in a similar way in the past. We might ask what helps them in tough situations, such as now limiting the intake of bad news, helping out someone else, keeping up a routine, doing some self-care, and so on. We might ask what supports might be helpful at this time, such as a family member, a friend, or a community member. If it seems indicated, encourage professional help. For example, saying, "Would it help if you were to call such and such a resource?" If there are significant signs of depression or anxiety, the family physician, or if they don't have a family physician, a walk-in clinic physician, is often a first resort. The Counseling Collaborative of Waterloo Region includes 6 community counseling agencies which can offer counseling services that are accessible to persons of every financial situation. In addition, employed persons may have an employee assistance plan. In addition, there are other quality therapeutic services in the region. A great source for information on a full spectrum of mental health, addiction, and other community services is the Here 24/7 Information and Crisis Line at 1-844-437-3247. This number also provides crisis assistance day and night. If someone has thoughts of suicide or is at high risk due to having the means and a plan to do themselves or others harm, Here 24/7 is available. There's 911, or proceeding to the nearest hospital emergency room. Another helpful website for a variety of resources during the pandemic is called Corizon for the Community. It provides a broad spectrum of ideas and resources for coping during the pandemic, from resources for adults, for caregivers and parents, and for children, to trusted resources for pandemic coping information, such as a CBT app called Wobot, other apps, the Friendly Voice phone check-in program to reduce loneliness, other free over-the-phone programs, and more helpful websites and community resources. As we noted in our previous presentations, it may be helpful to remind ourselves and to mention to others that it is more helpful to spend time thinking about what aspects of our lives are within our control and less time ruminating over what is outside our control, such as whether others are keeping social distancing or how long the pandemic will last. Rather, encourage healthy routines, rationing exposure to the news, and listing the concerns one has the potential to do something about, and then brainstorming on possible measures to begin to address them. Before we close, here are a few extra thoughts on staying positive during the pandemic. Many people may find themselves feeling lonely and isolated in these difficult times. Here are a few thoughts on this. I could ask myself what I am wishing for when I feel lonely, what sort of connection to people I'm seeking, or whether perhaps my own self-isolating is not helping the situation. I can avoid comparing myself to others and to idealized pictures of other people's lives that we see on social media. I can try and stay interested in pastimes and hobbies. I can seek positive means to meet people. I can note if any other factors are making me feel worse, such as mental health concerns, social and economic setbacks, and so forth, and seek the appropriate support. Without trying to whitewash the impact of the pandemic, we might even find some positive side effects to this very difficult and tragic situation. For example, the pandemic has raised our awareness in many ways. That despite our differences, we all have common vulnerability. That we can give priority to what is most important to us instead of getting caught up in silly distractions. That we can all reach out to each other, even in the simplest of ways. That we can all live a simpler lifestyle and pollute the planet less. And that we need to be more aware of those who are more vulnerable and rightfully need more support. Here are some online resources that may be of help as we seek to take reasonable care of ourselves and to be of support to others. As we continue to navigate the challenges of the pandemic, try and be good to yourselves and to each other.